Hi guys! Welcome back to another deep dive into the fascinating world of our ancient ancestors. Tonight, we are going to embark on a journey that spans tens of thousands of years, exploring one of humanity's most fundamental activities that shaped our evolution, our societies, and our very survival as a species. We'll be diving deep into the intricate world of ancient hunting practices, from the earliest stone tools crafted by our prehistoric ancestors to the sophisticated hunting strategies developed by civilizations across the globe. Throughout this journey, we'll discover how hunting wasn't just about finding food. It was about community, ritual, technology, and the delicate balance between humans and the natural world. We'll explore the tools that made survival possible, the techniques that required incredible patience and skill, and the cultural significance that hunting held in societies from the Arctic tundra to the African savanna. From the mammoth hunters of the Ice Age to the skilled archers of medieval Europe, from the ingenious trap builders of the Amazon to the nomadic hunters of the Great Plains, we'll uncover the stories of how our ancestors turned necessity into art, survival into culture, and hunting into one of the defining characteristics of human civilization. Okay, friends, before you settle in, if you enjoy this kind of deep dive content, then click the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And yes, leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I really enjoy seeing where everyone is listening from. Now, dim the lights and turn on the fan, and let's dive into tonight's journey together. The story of human hunting begins in the mists of prehistory, long before written records, when our earliest ancestors first picked up stones and shaped them into tools. Picture, if you will, the African savanna, approximately 2.5 million years ago. The landscape stretched endlessly under a blazing sun, dotted with acacia trees and filled with the sounds of countless animals. Among the tall grasses moved our ancient ancestors, not yet fully human, but no longer apes, carrying with them the spark of innovation that would eventually lead to the sophisticated hunting techniques we'll explore tonight. These early hominids, likely Homo habilis, were the first to systematically create and use stone tools for hunting and food processing. Their hands, more dexterous than those of their predecessors, could craft simple but effective implements from flint, obsidian, and other suitable stones. The process was painstakingly slow by our modern standards, requiring patience, skill, and an intimate understanding of stone properties that was passed down through generations. Each strike of stone against stone had to be precisely calculated, as one wrong hit could shatter hours of careful work. The creation of these tools represented a revolutionary leap in human development. No longer were our ancestors limited to scavenging the remains of kills made by more powerful predators. With their crude but effective choppers, scrapers, and cutting implements, they could process meat more efficiently, extract marrow from bones, and even begin to actively hunt smaller prey. This dietary shift toward more protein-rich foods is believed by many scientists to have contributed significantly to the growth and development of the human brain, setting the stage for all the innovations that would follow. The process of extracting marrow from bones was particularly significant in the development of early hunting culture. Marrow contains high concentrations of fat and protein, essential nutrients that were often scarce in the diets of early hominids. The specialized tools needed to crack open bones and extract marrow required considerable force and precision. Early toolmakers learned to create implements with specific angles and weights that could effectively break through the tough exterior of bones without destroying the valuable marrow inside. This marrow extraction process also led to the development of some of the earliest food-sharing behaviors observed in human ancestors. Because processing bones for marrow was time-consuming and required specialized tools, it often became a communal activity. Groups would gather around successful hunters, working together to process carcasses and sharing the results of their labor. These early food-sharing behaviors are considered by many anthropologists to be crucial steps in the development of complex social structures that would later characterize human societies. The locations where early humans processed their kills also became some of the first semi-permanent gathering places. Archaeological sites from this period show evidence of repeated use over extended periods, with accumulations of tools, bones, and other debris indicating that early humans returned to favorable locations again and again. These processing sites were typically chosen for their strategic advantages: proximity to water sources, defensible positions, and access to good stone for toolmaking. The development of more sophisticated scavenging techniques also played a crucial role in early hunting culture. Early humans learned to read the behaviors of predators and scavengers, understanding when and where fresh kills might be available. They developed techniques for driving off smaller scavengers and learned to work quickly to extract maximum value from carcasses before larger predators returned. This competitive scavenging environment helped develop many of the observational and strategic thinking skills that would later be applied to active hunting. Climate changes during this period also influenced the development of hunting techniques. As environments shifted between wet and dry periods, the availability and behavior of prey animals changed accordingly. Early hunters had to adapt their techniques to deal with these changing conditions, developing flexibility and adaptability that would serve them well as they spread into new environments around the world. The ability to modify hunting strategies based on environmental conditions became a defining characteristic of successful human groups. As thousands of years passed, these tools became more sophisticated. The simple choppers evolved into hand axes, carefully shaped implements that could serve multiple purposes in the hunting process. These tools weren't just randomly chipped stones, but carefully crafted instruments that required considerable skill to create. Archaeological evidence suggests that the process of making a proper hand axe could take several hours and required the toolmaker to hold a complex three-dimensional image in their mind while working. The evolution of hand axe technology reveals fascinating insights into the cognitive development of early humans. The symmetrical, teardrop-shaped hand axes found at archaeological sites around the world demonstrate that early toolmakers were working toward an idealized mental template. This suggests that they possessed abstract thinking abilities and could visualize the final product before beginning the manufacturing process. The consistency of hand axe designs across vast geographical distances and time periods indicates that these mental templates were shared within groups and passed down through generations. The manufacturing process itself required sophisticated understanding of stone properties and fracture mechanics. Tool makers had to select appropriate raw materials, understanding which types of stone would fracture predictably and which would produce the sharpest edges. They learned to identify flaws in stones that might cause tools to break during manufacture or use, and developed techniques for working around these imperfections. The actual knapping process required precise control of force and angle. Each strike had to be carefully calculated to remove the right amount of material in the right location. Too much force would shatter the tool, while too little would fail to remove the desired flake. The angle of each strike had to be adjusted based on the shape of the tool at that moment, requiring continuous mental recalculation throughout the manufacturing process. Different stages of hand axe manufacture required different techniques and tools. Rough shaping was often done with harder hammer stones, while fine finishing work required softer materials like antler or wood. Some tool makers learned to heat treat certain types of stone to make them easier to work, a technique that demonstrates sophisticated understanding of material properties and thermal processes. The social implications of advanced tool-making extended far beyond the immediate benefits of better hunting implements. Communities that could produce superior tools gained significant advantages in food procurement, which translated into better nutrition, larger population sizes, and greater survival rates. These technological advantages often became the foundation for cultural dominance, as groups with better tools could access resources that were unavailable to their less technologically advanced neighbors. The teaching of tool-making skills became one of the first forms of formal education in human societies. Master toolmakers would work closely with apprentices, demonstrating techniques, correcting mistakes, and gradually building up the complex skill sets required for proficient knapping. This knowledge transfer process required patience, communication skills, and the ability to break down complex processes into learnable components. Regional variations in tool-making techniques began to emerge during this period, as different groups developed specialized approaches adapted to their local environments and available materials. These regional traditions became some of the earliest examples of cultural diversity in human societies, with distinct technological signatures that can be identified in the archaeological record. The persistence of these regional traditions over thousands of years suggests that early human groups had strong cultural identities and mechanisms for preserving traditional knowledge. The social implications of tool-making were profound. Knowledge had to be passed from one generation to the next, requiring communication, demonstration, and practice. Groups that could effectively teach these skills to their young had significant advantages over those that couldn't. This need for knowledge transfer likely contributed to the development of more sophisticated communication methods and stronger social bonds within hunting groups. Around 400,000 years ago, our ancestors made another crucial breakthrough in hunting technology with the development of wooden spears. These weren't simply sharpened sticks, but carefully crafted weapons that represented a quantum leap in hunting effectiveness. The famous Schöningen spears, discovered in Germany and dating back approximately 400,000 years, show remarkable sophistication in their construction. Made from spruce wood, these spears were between 6 and 7 feet long and were weighted and balanced for throwing. The discovery of the Shoningen spears revolutionized our understanding of early human hunting capabilities. These weapons demonstrated that our ancestors possessed far more sophisticated understanding of physics and engineering than previously believed. The spears were not uniform in diameter, but were carefully tapered, with the thickest point located about 1/3 of the way from the tip. This distribution of weight created optimal balance for throwing, maximizing both accuracy and penetrating power. Analysis of the wear patterns on these ancient spears reveals fascinating details about how they were used. Microscopic examination shows evidence of impact damage consistent with hunting large animals, while the pattern of wear along the shaft suggests that they were thrown rather than used as thrusting weapons. Some spears show evidence of repeated sharpening and repair, indicating that these valuable tools were maintained and reused over extended periods. The wood selection process for spear making required extensive knowledge of tree species and their properties. Spruce was chosen for the Shoningen spears because of its combination of strength, flexibility, and straight grain structure. The hunters who made these spears had to identify trees of the right age and health, harvest them at the optimal time of year, and then allow the wood to season properly before beginning the manufacturing process. The crafting of wooden spears involved multiple stages of work spread over weeks or months. After initial harvesting and seasoning, the wood had to be carefully shaped using stone tools. The process required remarkable precision, as any imperfection in the shaft could cause the spear to fly incorrectly or break under stress. The final stages involved fire hardening the tip, a delicate process that required careful control of temperature and timing to achieve maximum hardness without making the wood brittle. Fire hardening techniques varied between different cultures and regions, but all required sophisticated understanding of thermal processes. The tip of the spear had to be heated gradually and evenly, often by rotating it slowly over carefully controlled coals. The temperature had to be high enough to dry out moisture and reorganize the wood fibers, but not so high as to char or weaken the material. The entire process required constant attention and could be ruined by a moment's inattention. Some groups developed even more advanced spear hardening techniques, using heated sand or stones to achieve more uniform heating. These methods required additional tools and preparation, but produced superior results. The investment in these advanced techniques demonstrates the high value that early hunters placed on having the best possible weapons. The development of hafting techniques for spear points represented another significant technological advance. While the Shoningen spears were made entirely of wood, later developments included the attachment of stone points to wooden shafts. This combination provided the penetrating power of sharp stone with the mechanical advantage of the wooden shaft, creating weapons that were superior to either material alone. Hafting required sophisticated understanding of stress distribution and failure points. The junction between the stone point and wooden shaft had to withstand tremendous forces during impact, while remaining secure enough not to separate during normal use. Early hunters experimented with various attachment methods, including binding with sinew or plant fibers, wedging into split shafts, and embedding in specially shaped sockets. The adhesives used in hafting often involved complex preparations of plant and animal materials. Tree resins, beeswax, and various plant gums were processed and combined to create strong, flexible bonds that could withstand the stresses of hunting use. The preparation of these adhesives required knowledge of chemistry and material science that was remarkable for its time. Quality control in spear manufacturing became increasingly important as hunting groups grew larger and more specialized. Master spear makers developed standards for straightness, balance, and durability that had to be met before a weapon was approved for hunting use. These standards were often enforced through testing procedures that simulated hunting conditions, ensuring that weapons would perform reliably when lives depended on them. The development of the spear fundamentally changed hunting strategies. No longer did hunters need to get dangerously close to their prey. They could now strike from a distance, reducing the risk of injury while increasing their chances of success. The spear also allowed for more coordinated group hunting tactics, as multiple hunters could simultaneously target a single large animal from different angles. The tactical implications of spear hunting extended far beyond simple distance advantages. With spears, hunters could engage multiple animals simultaneously, something that was impossible with close contact hunting methods. This capability was particularly important when hunting herd animals, where the ability to strike several animals quickly could prevent the entire herd from escaping. Spear hunting also enabled new environmental strategies. Hunters could position themselves in locations that would have been impractical for close contact hunting, such as elevated positions or areas separated by water or rough terrain. This flexibility opened up new hunting grounds and allowed hunters to take advantage of natural features that could aid in their success. The development of throwing techniques became a specialized skill that required years of practice to master. Successful spear throwing required precise coordination of multiple muscle groups, accurate distance estimation, and the ability to predict the movement of prey animals. Hunters had to account for factors such as wind speed and direction, the weight and balance of their particular spear, and the behavioral patterns of their target species. Training methods for spear throwing became increasingly sophisticated as the technique spread. Young hunters practiced on stationary targets before progressing to moving objects, gradually building the skills needed for actual hunting situations. Some groups developed competitive games and ceremonies around spear throwing, which served both to maintain and improve skills, while also providing entertainment and social bonding opportunities. The mathematics of spear throwing, while not formally understood, were intuitively mastered by successful hunters. They learned to calculate trajectories, account for gravitational drop over distance, and adjust for the movement of their prey. This practical understanding of physics represented a significant cognitive achievement that required abstract thinking and the ability to mentally model complex physical relationships. Accuracy standards for spear throwing were necessarily high, as missed shots could mean the difference between eating and going hungry. Master hunters could consistently hit targets at distances of 30 to 50 feet, with exceptional individuals capable of accurate throws at even greater ranges. These skills were maintained through constant practice and were considered essential qualifications for full participation in hunting activities. The psychological impact of spear hunting on prey animals was also significant. Animals that survived spear attacks learned to associate humans with danger at much greater distances than had been the case with close contact hunting methods. This led to evolutionary pressure that made prey animals more wary and alert, which in turn required hunters to develop even more sophisticated stalking and ambush techniques. Group coordination in spear hunting required sophisticated communication methods. Hunters had to coordinate their movements and timing without alerting prey animals to their presence. This led to the development of silent communication systems using hand signals, body language, and other non-vocal methods. These communication systems became increasingly complex as hunting tactics evolved, eventually forming some of the foundational elements of human language development. The logistics of spear hunting also required careful planning and preparation. Each hunter had to carry multiple spears to allow for missed shots or broken weapons, but the weight and bulk of multiple spears limited mobility and endurance. Hunting groups had to balance the advantages of being well armed against the disadvantages of being overburdened, leading to strategic decisions about group size, hunting duration, and target selection. But creating effective spears required more than just sharpening wood. The selection of appropriate wood was crucial. It needed to be strong enough not to break on impact, straight enough to fly true, and light enough to be thrown with sufficient force. Hunters learned to identify the best trees, harvest wood at the optimal time, and then spend considerable effort shaping, drying, and hardening their weapons. Some groups learned to fire harden the tips, a process that involved carefully controlling heat to make the wood harder and more durable without making it brittle. The use of spears also necessitated the development of new hunting techniques. Hunters had to learn to judge distances accurately, account for the movement of their prey, and coordinate their throws for maximum effectiveness. This required extensive practice and the development of what we might now call ballistics knowledge, though it was gained through experience rather than mathematical calculation. As human populations spread across the globe, encountering different environments and prey animals, hunting techniques became increasingly specialized and sophisticated. In the frozen landscapes of Ice Age Europe, hunters developed techniques for taking down some of the most massive and dangerous animals that ever coexisted with humans. The mammoth, standing up to 14 feet tall and weighing as much as 8 tons, represented both the ultimate prize and the ultimate challenge for these ancient hunters. The environment in which mammoth hunting took place was unlike anything that exists today. The Ice Age landscape was a vast expanse of tundra and grassland, dotted with scattered forests and crossed by countless streams and rivers. Temperatures were consistently cold, with long winters and brief summers that provided only limited time for optimal hunting conditions. The terrain was often difficult, with permafrost creating uneven ground conditions and seasonal flooding creating temporary barriers and opportunities. Understanding mammoth behavior was crucial for successful hunting. These massive creatures were highly intelligent and lived in social groups led by experienced matriarchs. They had excellent memories and could recognize and avoid areas where they had previously encountered danger. Mammoth herds followed predictable seasonal migration routes, moving between summer feeding grounds and winter shelter areas, but they could alter these routes in response to changing conditions or perceived threats. The social structure of mammoth herds created both opportunities and challenges for hunters. Adult females and their young stayed together in protective groups, while adult males were often solitary or formed small bachelor groups. The protective behavior of adult females made approaching the herds extremely dangerous, but it also created predictable response patterns that skilled hunters could exploit. Mammoth feeding behavior also influenced hunting strategies. These massive animals required enormous amounts of vegetation daily, spending most of their waking hours searching for and consuming food. They preferred certain types of plants and would concentrate in areas where these preferred foods were abundant. Hunters learned to identify these feeding areas and predict when mammoth herds would arrive. The seasonal cycles of mammoth behavior created windows of opportunity for hunters. During the rutting season, adult males became more aggressive and less cautious, making them easier targets. During calving season, herds moved more slowly and were more predictable in their movements. Winter conditions sometimes forced mammoths into areas where they could be more easily approached or trapped. Weather conditions played a crucial role in mammoth hunting success. Snow could provide camouflage for approaching hunters, but also made movement more difficult and noisy. Wind direction was critical, as mammoths had excellent senses of smell and could detect human scent from great distances. Hunters had to time their approaches to take advantage of favorable weather conditions while being prepared to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. The tracking of mammoth herds required extraordinary skill and patience. A single mammoth left tracks that were easy to follow, but reading the signs left by an entire herd required the ability to distinguish between individual animals, determine the direction and speed of movement, and estimate how much time had passed since the herd had passed through an area. Expert trackers could determine the size and composition of a herd, identify injured or sick animals, and predict where the herd was likely to go next. Scouting for mammoth hunting locations was a specialized activity that required intimate knowledge of the landscape and animal behavior. Scout teams would travel far ahead of hunting parties, identifying potential hunting sites, monitoring herd movements, and assessing environmental conditions. This advance work was essential for successful hunts, as it allowed hunting parties to position themselves optimally and avoid wasting time and energy on unsuccessful pursuits. The tools and weapons used in mammoth hunting had to be specially designed for these massive prey animals. Standard spears were often inadequate for penetrating the thick hide and fat layers of adult mammoths. Hunters developed heavier, more robust spear points specifically for mammoth hunting, often using the finest available stone materials and the most skilled craftsmanship available to their communities. Some mammoth hunters developed composite weapons that combined multiple materials for maximum effectiveness. Spear points might be made from specially selected flint or obsidian, hafted to wooden shafts with carefully prepared bindings and adhesives. The balance and weight distribution of these weapons had to be precisely calibrated to ensure maximum penetrating power while maintaining accuracy at the distances required for safe hunting. Mammoth hunting required incredible coordination, planning, and bravery. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe and Asia shows that these hunts were community efforts involving dozens of people working together with remarkable precision. The hunters couldn't simply chase down a mammoth. These massive creatures were too large, too dangerous, and too well adapted to their environment for such a direct approach to work. The planning phase of a mammoth hunt could take weeks or even months. Hunting leaders had to coordinate the movements of multiple groups, ensure adequate supplies of weapons and tools, and time the hunt to coincide with optimal conditions. Weather patterns, mammoth migration routes, available hunting grounds, and the readiness of the hunting party all had to be considered in the planning process. Communication between hunting groups was essential but challenging. Hunters might be spread across miles of terrain, requiring systems for long-distance signaling that wouldn't alert the prey animals. Smoke signals, reflected sunlight, and other visual communication methods were developed and refined for use in mammoth hunting operations. Backup communication plans had to be established in case primary methods failed due to weather or other conditions. The division of labor in mammoth hunting was complex and highly specialized. Some hunters were designated as drivers, responsible for moving the mammoth toward the killing site. Others served as blockers, preventing escape routes. The most skilled hunters were designated as spear throwers, positioned for optimal shots at vital areas. Support personnel handled logistics, maintained equipment, and provided backup assistance as needed. Training for mammoth hunting began in childhood and continued throughout a hunter's career. Young people learned basic skills through smaller hunts and gradually worked their way up to participation in mammoth hunting expeditions. The complexity and danger of mammoth hunting meant that only the most skilled and experienced hunters were allowed to participate in key roles. Risk management was crucial in mammoth hunting, as a single mistake could result in multiple casualties. Escape routes had to be planned and practiced, backup weapons had to be positioned strategically, and medical supplies had to be available for treating injuries. Hunting leaders spent considerable time developing contingency plans for various scenarios that might develop during a hunt. The psychological preparation for mammoth hunting was as important as the physical preparation. Hunters faced the prospect of confronting animals that were many times larger and stronger than themselves, requiring exceptional courage and mental discipline. Ritual preparations, including ceremonies, fasting, and meditation, helped hunters achieve the proper mental state for these dangerous endeavors. Teamwork in mammoth hunting required absolute trust and coordination between participants. Each hunter had to rely completely on their teammates to perform their assigned roles correctly and on schedule. The failure of any individual could compromise the entire operation and endanger everyone involved. This level of interdependence created strong bonds between hunting team members that often lasted for life. The timing of mammoth hunts had to be precise. taking advantage of brief windows of opportunity when conditions were optimal. Weather changes, mammoth behavior patterns, and the availability of hunting personnel all influenced timing decisions. Once a hunt began, there was often no opportunity to postpone or cancel the operation, requiring hunting leaders to make crucial go or no-go decisions under pressure. Equipment logistics for mammoth hunting were enormous by prehistoric standards. Each hunter required multiple spears, backup weapons, cutting tools, and personal supplies. The hunting party also needed ropes, processing tools, preservation materials, and equipment for transporting meat back to their communities. Organizing and transporting all this equipment required careful planning and significant manpower. The actual execution of mammoth hunts varied depending on terrain, weather, and the specific behavior of the target animals. Some hunts involved driving mammoths toward cliff faces or into boggy areas where they would be trapped or slowed. Others relied on surrounding and overwhelming individual animals separated from their herds. The most challenging hunts involved direct confrontation with mammoth herds in open terrain. Recovery operations after successful mammoth hunts were massive undertakings that could last for days or weeks. The amount of meat, hide, bone, and other materials from a single mammoth was enormous, requiring systematic processing and careful preservation to prevent spoilage. Specialized teams handled different aspects of the processing operation, from butchering to hide preparation to bone tool manufacturing. Instead, mammoth hunters developed sophisticated strategies that relied on their understanding of animal behavior, terrain, and group coordination. One common technique involved driving mammoths toward natural features that would give the hunters an advantage. Cliff faces, ravines, or boggy areas could trap or slow down the massive animals, giving hunters the opportunity to get close enough to use their spears effectively. The hunters would often work in carefully coordinated groups, with some individuals responsible for driving the animal toward the trap, while others waited in position to make the actual attack. Fire was sometimes used to direct the mammoth's movement, as these intelligent animals had a natural fear of flames. The entire process required split-second timing and absolute trust between group members, as a single mistake could result in serious injury or death. When a mammoth was successfully brought down, the work was far from over. Processing such an enormous animal required the entire community and could take several days. Every part of the mammoth was used: meat for food, hide for clothing and shelter, bones for tools and weapons, and even the fat for fuel. Nothing was wasted because survival in the harsh Ice Age environment depended on making use of every available resource. The bones of mammoths were particularly valuable, as they could be fashioned into a wide variety of tools and implements. Long bones became spear shafts or tent poles. Flat bones served as scoops or plates, and smaller bones were crafted into needles, awls, and other precision instruments. Some groups even used mammoth bones as construction materials, building shelters that could withstand the brutal winds and cold of the Ice Age. In warmer climates, hunters faced different challenges and developed correspondingly different techniques. In the dense forests of prehistoric Europe and Asia, visibility was limited, and large game animals like deer, Elk and wild boar could disappear into the undergrowth at the first sign of human presence. Forest hunters had to become masters of stealth, camouflage, and patience. The forest environment presented unique challenges that required specialized adaptations in hunting techniques and equipment. Dense vegetation limited the effectiveness of throwing weapons, as branches and leaves could deflect spears and arrows. The uneven terrain and obstacles made coordinated group hunts difficult to execute. Sound carried differently in forest environments, requiring hunters to modify their communication methods and movement techniques. Understanding forest ecosystems became crucial for hunting success. Hunters had to learn the complex relationships between different plant and animal species, understanding how the presence or absence of certain plants indicated the likelihood of finding particular prey animals. They learned to identify the subtle signs that revealed animal presence, disturbed vegetation, marking behaviors, feeding signs, and resting areas. Seasonal changes in forest environments created constantly shifting hunting opportunities and challenges. Spring brought new growth that could provide concealment, but also made movement noisier as hunters stepped on dry leaves and broken branches. Summer's dense foliage offered excellent camouflage opportunities, but limited visibility and made tracking more difficult. Fall created ideal conditions for many types of forest hunting, with increased animal activity and reduced vegetation providing better visibility while maintaining adequate cover. The development of specialized forest hunting equipment reflected the unique demands of this environment. Spears designed for forest use were often shorter and more maneuverable than those used in open terrain. Arrowheads were crafted with broader cutting surfaces to ensure quick kills in situations where tracking wounded animals through dense vegetation would be extremely difficult. Forest hunters developed sophisticated understanding of animal behavior patterns specific to woodland environments. They learned to identify the regular pathways used by different species, understanding that most forest animals followed habitual routes between feeding areas, water sources, and resting sites. These pathways, often invisible to untrained observers, became focal points for hunting activities. Camouflage techniques in forest environments reached extraordinary levels of sophistication. Hunters learned to construct elaborate blinds using natural materials that perfectly match their surroundings. They developed methods for applying mud, plant dyes, and other natural materials to their skin and clothing to break up their human outline and blend with forest shadows and dappled sunlight. The psychology of forest hunting required different mental skills than open terrain hunting. Hunters had to develop extraordinary patience, as successful forest hunting often required remaining motionless for hours while waiting for prey to approach within range. They had to maintain constant alertness while appearing completely passive, ready to react instantly when opportunities presented themselves. Sound discipline became critically important in forest hunting. Every footstep, clothing rustle, and equipment noise could alert prey animals to human presence. Hunters developed specialized techniques for moving silently through forest terrain, learning to place their feet carefully, control their breathing, and minimize any sounds that might reveal their presence to alert prey animals. Wind patterns in forest environments were complex and variable, requiring hunters to constantly monitor and adapt to changing air currents. The interaction between terrain features, vegetation density, and weather conditions created microclimates that could carry human scent in unexpected directions. Successful forest hunters developed almost supernatural sensitivity to these subtle environmental factors. Tracking in forest environments required different skills than tracking in open terrain. Tracks were often obscured by fallen leaves, dense vegetation, and complex terrain features. Forest trackers learned to read more subtle signs: bent twigs, disturbed moss, faint scent traces, and other indicators that revealed animal presence and movement patterns even when clear tracks were unavailable. The development of trap and snare technology was particularly important in forest hunting, where the dense vegetation and complex terrain made these passive hunting methods especially effective. Forest hunters learned to identify the natural choke points and pathways where traps would be most effective, and developed sophisticated trigger mechanisms that could capture prey animals without human presence. These hunters developed an intimate knowledge of animal behavior, learning to read tracks, droppings, feeding signs, and other indicators that revealed the presence and movement patterns of their prey. They knew which plants different animals preferred to eat, where they liked to drink, and what paths they typically followed through the forest. This knowledge was accumulated over generations and represented a sophisticated understanding of forest ecology. Camouflage became an art form among forest hunters. They learned to move silently through dense undergrowth, to remain motionless for hours at a time, and to mask their human scent with mud, leaves, and other natural materials. Some groups developed specialized clothing made from animal skins that helped them blend into their surroundings, while others learned to construct blinds and hides that completely concealed their presence. The development of the bow and arrow, which occurred independently in several parts of the world between 20,000 and 65,000 years ago, revolutionized hunting in forested environments. Unlike spears, which were primarily thrusting weapons or short-range projectiles, arrows could be shot with considerable accuracy over much greater distances. This allowed hunters to remain hidden while taking their shots, significantly reducing the chance that prey animals would detect them before it was too late. The invention of the bow represented one of the most significant technological leaps in human hunting history. The principle of storing energy in a bent piece of wood and releasing it to propel a projectile required sophisticated understanding of material science and mechanical engineering. The first bow makers had to experiment with different wood types, shapes, and sizes to develop effective designs. The selection of appropriate bow wood was crucial for creating effective weapons. Different wood species had varying characteristics in terms of flexibility, strength, and durability. Yew wood became particularly prized by many cultures for its exceptional combination of strength and elasticity. But other woods like ash, elm, and hickory were also used effectively in different regions and climates. The process of creating a bow began with careful selection of the raw material. Bow makers looked for trees with specific characteristics: straight grain, appropriate size, and freedom from knots or other defects. The wood often had to be seasoned for months or even years before it could be worked, requiring careful storage and protection from moisture and temperature extremes. Shaping a bow required exceptional skill and patience. The bow maker had to remove material gradually and symmetrically, constantly testing the flexibility and balance of the developing weapon. Too much material removed too quickly could ruin months of work, while insufficient material removal would result in a weak bow with poor performance. The final stages of bow making involved fine-tuning the tiller and balance to achieve optimal performance. The development of bowstrings presented its own challenges and opportunities for innovation. Early bowstrings were made from plant fibers, animal sinew, or twisted animal hair. Each material had different characteristics in terms of strength, durability, and performance in various weather conditions. Some cultures developed sophisticated techniques for processing and preparing bowstring materials to achieve optimal properties. The manufacture of arrows required even more precision than bow making, as arrows had to be perfectly straight and uniform to fly accurately. Arrow makers developed specialized tools and techniques for straightening wooden shafts, ensuring consistent weight and balance, and attaching points and fletching securely. The slightest imperfection in an arrow could cause it to fly erratically, making accurate shooting impossible. Fletching. The feathers attached to the rear of arrows required careful selection and preparation. Different types of feathers had varying characteristics, and the number, angle, and attachment method of fletching all influenced arrow flight. Many cultures developed distinctive fletching styles that became markers of cultural identity while also serving the practical purpose of improving arrow performance. Arrowhead design evolved to meet the specific requirements of different hunting situations. Small, sharp points were effective for birds and small mammals, while larger, broader heads were better for bigger game animals. Some hunters developed specialized arrowheads for specific prey species, optimizing the design for the anatomy and behavior of their intended targets. The technique of using a bow effectively required years of practice and physical conditioning. Drawing a bow required significant upper body strength, while accurate shooting demanded precise muscle control and the ability to maintain steady aim under pressure. The best archers developed the ability to draw, aim, and release arrows in fluid, automatic motions that could be executed quickly and quietly. Training methods for archery became increasingly sophisticated as the technology spread. Beginning archers practiced on stationary targets at close range, gradually increasing distance and introducing moving targets as their skills improved. Some cultures developed competitive archery games that served both as entertainment and as training exercises for hunters. The mathematics of archery, while not formally understood by ancient hunters, were intuitively mastered through practice and experience. Successful archers learned to calculate trajectories, compensate for wind and distance, and predict the movement of their prey. This practical understanding of ballistics represented a significant cognitive achievement that required abstract thinking and mathematical reasoning abilities. Creating effective bows and arrows required considerable skill and knowledge of materials. The bow itself had to be made from wood that was both flexible and strong, capable of storing and releasing energy efficiently. Different woods worked better in different climates, and hunters had to understand the properties of various tree species to select the best material for their needs. Arrows presented their own challenges. The shaft had to be straight and uniform in weight, while the point needed to be sharp enough to penetrate hide and flesh, but also durable enough not to break on impact. Fletching, the feathers attached to the back of the arrow, required careful selection and attachment to ensure that arrows flew straight and true. Many groups developed sophisticated arrowhead designs for different types of prey. Broad, sharp points worked well for large animals where maximum damage was important, while smaller, narrower points were better for birds and small mammals where precision was more crucial than raw power. Some hunters even developed specialized arrow designs for fishing, with barbed points that could penetrate and hold on to slippery fish. In the grasslands and prairies of various continents, hunters faced yet another set of challenges. These open environments provided excellent visibility, which was advantageous for spotting prey at great distances, but also meant that prey animals could easily see approaching hunters. The solution lay in developing hunting techniques that took advantage of the specific characteristics of grassland environments and the animals that lived there. Many grassland animals, such as bison, antelope, and wild horses, were highly social and moved in large herds. This presented both opportunities and challenges for hunters. While a successful hunt could provide enough food to feed a large group for an extended period, approaching and taking down animals from a vigilant herd required sophisticated strategies and careful planning. The social structures of herd animals created complex dynamics that experienced hunters learned to understand and exploit. Most herds had sentinel animals that maintained watch while others fed, creating early warning systems that could alert entire herds to danger within seconds. Hunters had to develop techniques for either avoiding detection by these sentinels or for neutralizing their effectiveness through distraction or misdirection. Herd behavior patterns varied significantly between species and even between different herds of the same species. Some herds were highly disciplined and moved in predictable formations, while others were more chaotic and unpredictable. Understanding these behavioral differences was crucial for developing effective hunting strategies. The leadership structures within herds also influenced hunting tactics. Dominant animals often determined the direction and timing of herd movements, making them both valuable targets and dangerous opponents. Removing the leader of a herd could create chaos that made other animals easier to hunt, but it could also trigger panic that scattered the entire herd beyond reach. Seasonal changes in herd behavior created different hunting opportunities throughout the year. During breeding seasons, animals might be more distracted and easier to approach, but they might also be more aggressive and dangerous. Calving seasons brought vulnerable young animals, but also protective mothers willing to fight to defend their offspring. The development of drive hunting techniques became particularly important for hunting herd animals in grassland environments. These techniques involved coordinating large numbers of hunters to move entire herds toward killing sites or natural traps. The scale and complexity of drive hunts required sophisticated planning and organization that challenged the limits of prehistoric social coordination. Scouting for drive hunts required teams of hunters to survey vast areas of terrain, identifying suitable drive routes, potential obstacles, and optimal killing sites. This advance work might take weeks or months, as scouts had to understand not only the current location and behavior of target herds, but also predict their future movements based on seasonal patterns and environmental conditions. The construction of drive lanes and guide structures required enormous labor investments from entire communities. These structures, built from stones, wooden posts, or other available materials, had to be substantial enough to influence the movement of large, powerful animals, while also being camouflaged enough not to alarm them before the drive began. Communication during drive hunts required sophisticated signaling systems that could coordinate the actions of hunters spread across miles of terrain. Visual signals using smoke, reflected sunlight, or raised objects had to be visible over long distances while remaining undetectable to prey animals. Backup communication plans were essential in case primary signaling methods failed. The execution of drive hunts required split-second timing and absolute coordination between all participants. Hunters, positioned as drivers, had to reveal themselves at precisely the right moment to start the herd moving, while hunters positioned along the drive route had to remain hidden until the critical moment when their actions were needed to guide or redirect the moving animals. Risk management in drive hunts was particularly complex because of the large number of participants and the unpredictable nature of panicked herd animals. Escape routes had to be planned for every hunter, and contingency plans had to be developed for various scenarios, including equipment failure, weather changes, and unexpected animal behavior. The psychological demands of drive hunting were intense for all participants. Hunters had to maintain focus and readiness for hours or days while waiting for the optimal moment to begin the hunt. Once the drive started, they had to make rapid decisions and execute precise actions while surrounded by chaos and danger. Success in drive hunting often depended on understanding the specific terrain features of the hunting area. Natural features like ridges, valleys, streams, and rock formations could be used to channel animal movement or create bottlenecks where hunting would be more effective. The most successful hunting groups were those that developed intimate knowledge of their local terrain. Weather conditions had enormous influence on the success of drive hunts. Wind direction affected scent dispersal and animal behavior, while precipitation could make terrain treacherous for both hunters and prey animals. Cloud cover and visibility conditions influenced the effectiveness of visual signaling systems and the ability of hunters to coordinate their actions. The aftermath of successful drive hunts presented logistical challenges that were almost as complex as the hunts themselves.
Processing large numbers of animals required systematic organization to prevent spoilage and ensure equitable distribution of meat and other valuable materials.
These processing operations often became significant social events that strengthened community bonds and reinforced cultural traditions. One of the most famous grassland hunting techniques was the buffalo jump, used by Native American groups on the Great Plains for thousands of years. This technique involved driving entire herds of bison toward cliff faces where they would fall to their deaths. The process required careful scouting to identify suitable cliff locations, construction of guide structures to direct the herd's movement, and precise timing to execute the drive successfully. The buffalo jump wasn't a simple matter of chasing animals toward a cliff. Hunters had to position themselves carefully upwind of the herd, moving slowly and patiently to avoid spooking the animals prematurely. Drive lanes, often marked by stone cairns or wooden posts, were constructed to funnel the herd toward the jump site. The final drive required perfect coordination, as hunters would reveal themselves suddenly, using noise, movement, and sometimes fire to stampede the herd toward the cliff. When successful, a buffalo jump could provide enough meat, hides, and other materials to sustain a large community through an entire winter. Like mammoth hunting, processing the results of a buffalo jump was a community effort that brought people together and strengthened social bonds. Every member of the group, from the youngest children to the eldest adults, had a role to play in the processing and preservation of the meat and other materials. The development of more sophisticated projectile weapons continued throughout prehistory, with different cultures creating innovative solutions to the challenges of their particular environments. The atlatl, or spear thrower, was one such innovation that appeared in various forms across multiple continents. This device, essentially a lever that extended the hunter's arm and increased the force with which a spear could be thrown, significantly improved the range and power of spear-based hunting. The physics of the atlatl represented a sophisticated understanding of leverage and mechanical advantage that was remarkable for its time. By effectively extending the length of the hunter's throwing arm, the atlatl increased the velocity at which spears could be launched, resulting in greater range, accuracy, and penetrating power. The mechanical principles involved were complex, requiring precise balance and timing to achieve optimal results. Different cultures developed distinct atlatl designs adapted to their specific hunting needs and available materials. Some atlatls were simple wooden devices with basic grip areas and spear rests, while others incorporated complex curved shapes, counterweights, and decorative elements that also served functional purposes. The most sophisticated atlatls showed evidence of extensive experimentation and refinement over many generations. The materials used in atlatl construction varied based on local availability and cultural preferences. Wood was the most common material, but bone, antler, and even stone were used in some designs. The choice of material affected not only the performance characteristics of the atlatl, but also its durability, weight, and balance. Some cultures developed composite atlatls that combined multiple materials to achieve optimal performance. Manufacturing techniques for atlas required considerable skill and experience. The critical dimensions and angles had to be precisely controlled to ensure proper function, while the surface finish and grip areas had to be carefully shaped for comfort and control. The attachment points for spears required particular attention, as any imperfection could cause spears to release improperly or become damaged during use. The development of specialized spears for use with atlas created new challenges and opportunities for weapon designers. These spears had to be lighter and more flexible than hand-thrown spears, while also being strong enough to withstand the increased forces generated by atlatl launching. The balance point and flexibility characteristics of atlatl spears were critical for achieving accurate flight paths. Training with Atlas required developing entirely new sets of motor skills and muscle memory. The throwing motion was different from hand-throwing techniques, requiring precise coordination between the atlatl and the spear throughout the launching sequence. Beginning users often experienced difficulty with timing and release point, requiring extensive practice to achieve proficiency. Advanced atlatl techniques included methods for rapid reloading and multiple target engagement that made these weapons particularly effective in hunting situations involving multiple animals or moving targets. Expert users could maintain high rates of accurate fire that exceeded what was possible with hand-thrown spears, making atlans particularly valuable in group hunting situations. The accuracy potential of Atlas in skilled hands was remarkable, with expert users able to hit targets consistently at distances far exceeding those possible with hand-thrown spears. This increased range capability opened up new hunting strategies and tactics, allowing hunters to engage prey animals from positions that would have been impossible with earlier weapons technology. Maintenance and repair of atlatls required ongoing attention to ensure continued performance. The stress concentrations at attachment points and pivot areas made these locations vulnerable to wear and damage. Hunters had to develop skills in atlatl maintenance and repair, often carrying backup equipment and replacement parts during extended hunting expeditions. The social implications of atlat technology included changes in hunting group dynamics and individual status systems. Hunters who mastered atlatl techniques often gained increased prestige and influence within their communities. The investment in time and materials required to create and maintain high-quality atlas also created new forms of wealth and social differentiation. Regional variations in atlatl technology reflected both functional adaptations to local conditions and cultural preferences that served as markers of group identity. Archaeological evidence shows that atlat designs were often highly distinctive between different cultural groups, suggesting that these tools served important symbolic functions in addition to their practical hunting applications. The persistence of atlat technology in some cultures long after the development of bow and arrow technology suggests that these tools had advantages that made them preferable under certain conditions. The greater power and penetrating capability of atlat-launched spears made them particularly effective for hunting large, thick-skinned animals that might be difficult to kill with arrows. Innovation in atlat technology continued throughout its period of use, with later versions showing evidence of continuous refinement and improvement. Some cultures developed atlatls with adjustable components that could be modified for different hunting situations, while others created specialized versions optimized for particular prey species or hunting environments. The decline of atlatl technology in most cultures coincided with the adoption of bow and arrow systems, but the transition was often gradual rather than immediate. Many cultures maintained both technologies simultaneously, using each for different hunting situations based on their relative advantages and limitations. This technological coexistence demonstrates the sophisticated understanding that ancient hunters had of their tools and their applications. Using an atlatl effectively required considerable practice and skill. The hunter had to master the proper grip, stance, and throwing motion to achieve maximum accuracy and power. When used by a skilled hunter, an atlat could propel a spear with enough force to penetrate the thick hide of large animals and could achieve ranges far beyond what was possible with hand-thrown spears. Different cultures developed their own variations of the atlatl, adapted to local needs and materials. Some were simple wooden devices, while others incorporated decorative elements or were made from more exotic materials like bone or antler. The flexibility and effectiveness of the atlatl made it a popular hunting tool that persisted in some cultures long after the bow and arrow had been invented. In aquatic environments, hunters faced unique challenges that led to the development of highly specialized techniques and tools. Rivers, lakes, and coastal areas provided abundant protein sources, but accessing fish, marine mammals, and waterfowl required different approaches than land-based hunting. The diversity of aquatic environments created correspondingly diverse hunting challenges and opportunities. Shallow, slow-moving streams required different techniques than deep, fast-flowing rivers. Lake hunting presented different challenges than ocean hunting. Each environment had its own characteristics in terms of water conditions, prey behavior, seasonal patterns, and available hunting methods. Understanding aquatic ecosystems was essential for successful fishing and marine hunting. Hunters had to learn about water temperatures, current patterns, seasonal migrations, feeding behaviors, and breeding cycles of various aquatic species. This knowledge was often highly localized, as conditions could vary significantly even within relatively small geographic areas. The development of watercraft was crucial for accessing many aquatic hunting opportunities. The earliest boats were probably simple rafts or hollowed logs, but these evolved into sophisticated vessels designed for specific hunting applications. Different types of watercraft were developed for different hunting situations, from small, maneuverable craft for individual hunters to larger vessels capable of carrying hunting teams and their equipment. Construction techniques for hunting watercraft required specialized knowledge of materials, design principles, and manufacturing methods. Builders had to understand the properties of different woods, the techniques for shaping and joining pieces, and the methods for waterproofing and maintaining their creations. The most sophisticated watercraft showed evidence of generations of refinement and improvement. Safety considerations in aquatic hunting were particularly important because of the additional dangers posed by water environments. Hunters had to deal not only with the normal risks associated with hunting dangerous animals, but also with the possibilities of capsizing, hypothermia, and drowning. This required the development of safety equipment, rescue techniques, and emergency procedures. Seasonal patterns in aquatic environments created dramatically different hunting conditions throughout the year. Spring ice breakup opened up new hunting opportunities, but also created dangerous conditions with floating ice and unpredictable currents. Summer conditions were generally most favorable for many types of aquatic hunting, while fall migrations created opportunities for intensive harvesting before winter conditions made hunting impossible or extremely dangerous. Navigation skills became essential for hunters operating in large aquatic environments. Without landmarks, hunters had to develop techniques for finding their way across open water, locating productive fishing areas, and returning safely to shore. This required understanding of wind patterns, current flows, celestial navigation, and other environmental indicators. Weather sensitivity in aquatic hunting was extreme, as conditions could change rapidly and create life-threatening situations. Hunters had to learn to read weather signs, understand the relationship between atmospheric conditions and water behavior, and make critical decisions about when hunting conditions were too dangerous to proceed. The development of specialized fishing techniques reflected the diversity of aquatic prey species and environmental conditions. Different fish species required different approaches, from the patient techniques needed for large, wary fish to the rapid methods used for catching schools of smaller species. Some techniques were designed for individual hunters, while others required coordinated group efforts. Spear fishing techniques evolved to take advantage of the unique properties of the aquatic environment. Water refraction made accurate spearing difficult, requiring hunters to learn to compensate for the apparent displacement of underwater targets. Spear designs had to be modified to work effectively underwater, with considerations for drag, buoyancy, and retrieval. The development of fishhooks represented a major technological innovation that opened up entirely new possibilities for aquatic hunting. Early hooks were carved from bone, wood, or shell and required considerable skill to manufacture. The shape, size, and sharpness of hooks had to be carefully controlled to ensure effectiveness with different types of fish. Bait selection and preparation became specialized knowledge areas that were crucial for successful hook fishing. Different fish species were attracted to different types of bait, and the preparation and presentation of bait could significantly influence fishing success. Some hunters developed sophisticated understanding of fish feeding behaviors and seasonal dietary preferences. Fishing techniques varied tremendously based on local conditions and available materials. In shallow waters, hunters might use spears with multiple prongs or barbed points to increase their chances of successfully striking and holding on to fish. Deeper waters required different approaches, such as hooks and lines made from bone, wood, or plant fibers. The development of multi-pronged fishing spears represented sophisticated understanding of probability and fish behavior. These weapons increased the chances of striking fast-moving fish by creating multiple impact points, while the prong design helped prevent fish from escaping even if they weren't struck in vital areas. The spacing and angle of prongs had to be carefully calculated based on the size and behavior of target fish species. Barbed spear points evolved through extensive experimentation with different designs and materials. The barbs had to be sharp and angled correctly to penetrate fish scales and flesh while preventing escape. But they also had to be strong enough not to break under the stress of struggling fish. Different barb configurations were developed for different types of fish, reflecting sophisticated understanding of fish anatomy and behavior. Line fishing techniques required the development of strong, flexible lines that could withstand the stress of fighting fish while remaining sensitive enough to detect subtle bites. Early fishing lines were made from twisted plant fibers, animal sinew, or hair, each material having different characteristics in terms of strength, sensitivity, and durability in water. The manufacture of fishing lines was a time-consuming process that required considerable skill. Plant fibers had to be carefully selected, prepared, and spun into threads before being twisted together into lines of appropriate strength and thickness. The consistency of line diameter was crucial for achieving proper balance and sensitivity in fishing applications. Weight systems for fishing lines evolved to meet different fishing conditions and techniques. Simple stone weights allowed lines to be used in deeper water or stronger currents, while more sophisticated weight systems provided better control over line behavior and fish presentation. Some cultures developed adjustable weight systems that could be modified during fishing sessions to adapt to changing conditions. The development of sophisticated fish trap designs represented some of the most ingenious engineering achievements of prehistoric cultures. These traps had to channel fish into confined areas while preventing escape, often using one-way entrance designs that took advantage of natural fish behavior patterns. The construction of effective fish traps required detailed understanding of fish psychology, water flow dynamics, and structural engineering principles. Funnel traps, which guided fish into progressively smaller enclosures, were among the most effective and widely used designs. These traps required careful attention to the angles and dimensions of the funnel sections, as improper design could allow fish to escape or could fail to attract fish into the trap in the first place. The materials used in funnel construction had to be strong enough to contain struggling fish while being flexible enough to withstand water pressure and current forces. Weir construction involved building partial dams across streams or rivers, creating artificial channels that concentrated fish into areas where they could be more easily caught. These structures required sophisticated understanding of hydrology and engineering, as they had to redirect water flow without creating dangerous flooding or completely blocking fish migrations. The timing of fish trap deployment was crucial for success, as most fish species had predictable seasonal movement patterns that created optimal trapping opportunities. Hunters had to understand breeding migrations, feeding movements, and seasonal habitat changes to position their traps effectively. This required long-term observation and record-keeping that represented some of the earliest forms of scientific data collection. Maintenance of fish traps was an ongoing responsibility that required regular inspection, repair, and modification. Water conditions, weather, and fish behavior could damage or compromise trap effectiveness, requiring hunters to develop skills in underwater construction and repair. The investment in time and materials for trap construction meant that maintaining existing traps was often more economical than building new ones. Cooperative fishing efforts using large nets or seine techniques required coordination between multiple hunters and sophisticated understanding of fish behavior and water conditions. These techniques could capture large numbers of fish in single operations, but they required careful planning, precise planning, and equitable distribution systems for sharing the results. Net manufacturing was among the most technically demanding crafts in prehistoric societies, requiring the production of uniform cordage, precise knotting techniques, and careful attention to mesh size and net dimensions. Different types of nets were required for different fishing applications, from fine mesh nets for small fish to heavy-duty nets for larger, stronger species. Some groups developed sophisticated fish traps that could capture large numbers of fish with minimal active hunting effort. These traps, often constructed from woven plant materials or carefully arranged stones, took advantage of fish behavior patterns to guide swimming fish into enclosed areas where they could be easily captured. Building effective fish traps required detailed knowledge of fish behavior, water flow patterns, and seasonal movements. Net fishing represented another significant innovation in aquatic hunting. Creating nets required considerable time and skill, as fibers had to be processed from plants or animal sinews and then woven into complex patterns that were both strong enough to hold fish and fine enough to prevent escape. Different mesh sizes were used for different types of fish, and nets had to be carefully maintained and repaired to remain effective. Marine hunting presented even greater challenges than freshwater fishing. Hunting seals, whales, and other marine mammals required not only sophisticated weapons and techniques, but also the development of watercraft capable of handling ocean conditions. The Inuit of the Arctic developed some of the most advanced marine hunting techniques in the world, creating specialized equipment and strategies for hunting in one of Earth's most challenging environments. The kayak, a small, maneuverable boat designed for a single hunter, was perhaps the most important tool in the Arctic marine hunter's arsenal. These boats were constructed from driftwood or whale bones covered with sealskin, creating a vessel that was both lightweight and waterproof. The design of kayaks was refined over thousands of years, with different regional variations adapted to local conditions and hunting requirements. Hunting seals from a kayak required incredible skill and patience. Seals are intelligent, alert animals that can quickly disappear beneath the surface at the first sign of danger. Hunters had to approach silently, often waiting motionlessly for hours until a seal surfaced within range of their harpoons. The harpoon itself was a sophisticated weapon designed to penetrate the seal's skin and then deploy barbs or toggles that would prevent the wounded animal from escaping. The hunting of larger marine mammals, such as whales, required community efforts similar to mammoth or bison hunting on land. Multiple kayaks would work together to approach and attack a whale, with each hunter playing a specific role in the coordinated assault. The harpoons used for whale hunting were larger and more robust than those used for seals, often incorporating inflated seal bladders that would tire the whale and prevent it from diving to unreachable depths. Processing a whale was an enormous undertaking that could occupy an entire community for weeks. Like mammoth hunting, every part of the whale was used. The meat provided food for months. The blubber was rendered into oil for lamps and cooking. The bones became tools and structural materials, and the skin was used for clothing and boat covers. The successful hunting of a whale was often celebrated with elaborate ceremonies that reinforced community bonds and honored the spirit of the animal. As human societies became more complex and settled, hunting techniques evolved to incorporate new technologies and strategies. The development of metallurgy allowed for the creation of more durable and effective weapons and tools. Bronze and later iron spear points were sharper and more durable than their stone predecessors, while metal knives and axes made the processing of game more efficient. The domestication of animals also had a profound impact on hunting practices. Dogs, the first domesticated animals, became invaluable hunting companions. Their superior senses of smell and hearing could detect prey that humans might miss, while their speed and agility allowed them to pursue and corner animals that might otherwise escape. Different breeds of dogs were developed for different types of hunting, from small, fast dogs for chasing rabbits to large, powerful breeds capable of bringing down deer or wild boar. Horses, when they became available to hunters, revolutionized hunting in open landscapes. Mounted hunters could cover vast distances quickly, pursue fleeing animals, and carry much more equipment than was possible on foot. The combination of horses and bows created particularly effective hunting teams, as skilled riders could shoot accurately while moving at high speeds. The development of more sophisticated trapping techniques allowed hunters to capture animals with less direct effort and risk. Deadfall traps, snares, and pitfall traps could be set and left unattended, allowing hunters to cover more territory and capture prey even when they weren't actively hunting. These traps required detailed knowledge of animal behavior and movement patterns, as they had to be placed in locations where animals would naturally encounter them. Different types of traps were developed for different animals and situations. Small mammals like rabbits and squirrels could be caught in simple snare traps made from plant fibers or sinew. Larger animals required more substantial traps, such as deadfalls that used heavy logs or stones to crush or pin prey. Some cultures developed elaborate trap systems that could capture multiple animals at once, such as fence traps that guided animals into enclosures where they could be easily captured. The spiritual and cultural aspects of hunting were as important as the practical techniques in many ancient societies. Hunting wasn't merely a means of obtaining food, but was deeply intertwined with religious beliefs, social structures, and cultural identity. Many cultures developed elaborate rituals and ceremonies associated with hunting, designed to ensure success, honor the spirits of animals, and maintain the balance between humans and the natural world. The integration of spiritual beliefs with hunting practices created complex systems of meaning that governed every aspect of the hunting process. From the selection and preparation of weapons to the distribution of meat after successful hunts, spiritual considerations influenced practical decisions and created frameworks for understanding the relationship between humans and animals. Animistic beliefs, which attributed souls or spirits to animals, were common in many hunting cultures. These beliefs created moral and ethical frameworks that governed hunting behavior, requiring hunters to show respect for their prey and to follow specific protocols designed to honor animal spirits. Violation of these spiritual requirements was believed to result in hunting failure, illness, or other forms of supernatural punishment. The concept of reciprocity between humans and animals was fundamental to many hunting belief systems. Hunters believed that animals gave their lives willingly to humans who showed proper respect and followed appropriate rituals. This reciprocal relationship created obligations on both sides, with humans required to use all parts of killed animals, to share meat according to cultural rules, and to perform ceremonies that honored the spirits of the deceased animals. Totemic relationships between human groups and specific animal species created complex systems of identity and spiritual connection. Many hunting cultures believed that they were descended from or spiritually connected to particular animals, creating both special hunting privileges and special hunting restrictions. These totemic relationships influenced everything from marriage patterns to seasonal hunting schedules. The role of shamans and spiritual leaders in hunting cultures was often central to hunting success and community welfare. These individuals served as intermediaries between the human and animal worlds, performing ceremonies to ensure hunting success, interpreting omens and signs related to hunting, and providing guidance on spiritual aspects of hunting practice. Divination practices related to hunting involved various methods for predicting hunting success, identifying optimal hunting times and locations, and understanding the spiritual conditions that might influence hunting outcomes. These practices often combined careful observation of natural phenomena with spiritual interpretation, creating sophisticated systems for decision-making in uncertain conditions. Dream interpretation was particularly important in many hunting cultures, as dreams were believed to provide communication from animal spirits, guidance from ancestors, and previews of future hunting success or failure. Hunters often underwent special preparations to encourage prophetic dreams, and the interpretation of hunting-related dreams became a specialized skill practiced by experienced elders. Purification rituals before hunting served multiple purposes, including spiritual preparation, psychological focus, and group bonding. These rituals often involved fasting, bathing, sweating, or other forms of physical and spiritual cleansing, designed to remove contamination that might interfere with hunting success. The specific requirements varied between cultures, but almost always involved some form of sacrifice or self-discipline. Hunting taboos created complex systems of restrictions and requirements that governed hunter behavior before, during, and after hunting expeditions. These taboos might involve dietary restrictions, sexual abstinence, specific clothing requirements, or behavioral constraints designed to maintain spiritual purity and animal favor. Violation of hunting taboos was believed to have serious consequences for both individual hunters and their communities. The spiritual preparation of hunting weapons was often as important as their physical preparation. Weapons might be blessed by shamans, decorated with spiritual symbols, or subjected to special rituals designed to imbue them with spiritual power. Some cultures believed that weapons had spirits of their own that needed to be honored and maintained through appropriate ceremonies. Seasonal hunting ceremonies marked the beginning and end of hunting seasons, honoring the animals that would be hunted and giving thanks for successful hunts. These ceremonies often involved the entire community and served to reinforce cultural values, share hunting knowledge, and strengthen social bonds. The timing and content of these ceremonies were often precisely prescribed by cultural tradition. Animal honoring ceremonies after successful hunts were designed to show respect for killed animals and to ensure their spiritual cooperation in future hunts. These ceremonies might involve specific methods for handling animal remains, offerings of food or other valuable items, and formal expressions of gratitude and respect. The proper performance of these ceremonies was believed to be essential for continued hunting success. The distribution of meat from successful hunts was often governed by complex spiritual and social rules that reinforced community relationships and cultural values. Certain parts of animals might be reserved for elders, shamans, or successful hunters, while other parts were distributed according to kinship relationships or social obligations. These distribution systems served both practical and spiritual functions in maintaining community harmony. Sacred hunting grounds were locations believed to have special spiritual significance or power that made them particularly favorable for hunting activities. These areas were often protected by taboos and special regulations, and access might be restricted to certain individuals or hunting groups. The identification and protection of sacred hunting grounds was often a community responsibility that involved both spiritual and practical considerations. Pre-hunt ceremonies often involved prayers, offerings, and ritual purification designed to prepare hunters spiritually for their task. Hunters might fast for several days, participate in sweat lodge ceremonies, or undergo other forms of spiritual preparation. These rituals served multiple purposes. They helped focus the hunters' minds on the task ahead, reinforced group cohesion and shared purpose, and demonstrated respect for the animals they were about to hunt. Many cultures believed that animals possessed spirits that had to be honored and appeased. Hunting success was often attributed not just to skill and preparation, but to the favor of animal spirits and hunting deities. This belief system encouraged sustainable hunting practices, as overhunting or showing disrespect to animals could result in spiritual retribution and future hunting failure. Post-hunt ceremonies were equally important in many cultures. The successful return of hunters was often celebrated with communal feasts, storytelling, and Thanksgiving rituals. These celebrations served to share the benefits of successful hunts with the entire community and to pass on hunting knowledge and cultural values to younger generations. The distribution of meat from successful hunts often followed strict cultural rules that reinforced social hierarchies and obligations. The tools and weapons used in hunting often held special spiritual significance beyond their practical value. Spears, bows, and other hunting implements might be decorated with symbols, blessed by shamans, or passed down through families as sacred heirlooms. The creation of hunting tools was often surrounded by ritual and ceremony, as the makers sought to imbue their creations with spiritual power that would ensure hunting success. Animal totems and spirit guides played important roles in many hunting cultures. Hunters might identify with particular animals, believing that they possessed special knowledge or power related to their totem animal. This identification influenced hunting practices, as hunters might avoid hunting their totem species or might seek to emulate the hunting techniques of their spirit animal. The seasonal patterns of animal behavior had profound effects on the development of human societies and hunting practices. Most animals have predictable breeding, migration, and feeding cycles that created opportunities and challenges for hunters. Understanding these patterns was crucial for hunting success and influenced everything from where groups established camps to when they planned major hunts. Seasonal hunting often required different techniques and equipment. Spring hunts might focus on young animals that were easier to catch but provided less meat, while fall hunts targeted animals that had fattened for winter and provided maximum nutrition. Winter hunting in cold climates required specialized equipment and techniques to deal with snow, ice, and extreme temperatures. Migration patterns created opportunities for concentrated hunting efforts. Many cultures timed their movements to coincide with animal migrations, positioning themselves along migration routes where large numbers of animals could be hunted in relatively short periods. These seasonal aggregations of both animals and hunters often became important social and cultural events, opportunities for different groups to meet, trade, and exchange information. The storage and preservation of meat from successful hunts was a critical challenge that led to numerous innovations. In cold climates, natural refrigeration allowed meat to be stored for extended periods. But in warmer climates, other preservation methods had to be developed. Smoking, drying, and salt curing became important techniques for extending the useful life of hunted meat. Different cultures developed sophisticated methods for maximizing the nutritional value of their hunts. Pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried meat, fat, and sometimes berries, could provide complete nutrition in a compact, portable form that kept for months or even years. Similar preserved foods were developed by cultures around the world, each adapted to local ingredients and conditions. The division of labor in hunting societies reflected both practical necessities and cultural values. While the actual hunting was often done primarily by men, women played crucial roles in many aspects of the hunting process. Women often processed game, prepared preservation materials, manufactured hunting equipment, and maintained the complex knowledge systems that supported successful hunting. Children learned hunting skills gradually, starting with simple tasks and gradually taking on more complex and dangerous responsibilities. Young boys might start by helping to carry equipment or track animals, eventually progressing to using weapons and participating in actual hunts. This gradual learning process ensured that hunting knowledge and skills were passed down reliably from generation to generation. The social organization of hunting groups varied considerably between cultures, but most developed systems that balanced individual achievement with group cooperation. Successful hunters might gain prestige and leadership roles within their groups, but the sharing of meat and other hunting spoils was usually governed by strict cultural rules that ensured all group members benefited from hunting success. Leadership in hunting often required a combination of practical skills, spiritual knowledge, and social abilities. Hunt leaders had to be skilled hunters themselves, but they also needed to understand animal behavior, coordinate group efforts, and make crucial decisions under pressure. The most respected hunt leaders were often those who could consistently bring their groups home safely with successful hunts. Trade relationships between different groups often revolved around hunting products and expertise. Groups that lived in environments rich in certain types of animals might trade meat, hides, or hunting tools for products from groups that had access to different resources. These trade networks could span vast distances and helped spread hunting innovations and techniques between distant cultures. The development of agriculture didn't immediately end the importance of hunting in human societies. Many cultures combined farming and hunting, using agricultural products to supplement hunted foods and vice versa. In some cases, Agricultural practices were timed to avoid conflicts with important hunting seasons, while in others, farming provided security that allowed for more ambitious and risky hunting expeditions. Domestic animals often played important roles in hunting, farming societies. Cattle, pigs, and other domestic animals provided reliable protein sources, but hunting continued to provide variety in diet and access to materials like furs and antlers that domestic animals couldn't supply. The skills and knowledge developed through hunting also proved valuable in managing domestic herds and protecting them from wild predators. As human populations grew and technology advanced, hunting gradually transitioned from a necessity for survival to a more specialized activity. Professional hunters might supply meat to communities that were primarily engaged in other activities, while recreational hunting became a pastime for those who no longer needed to hunt for survival. The weapons and techniques used in hunting continued to evolve throughout recorded history. Crossbows provided greater accuracy and required less training than traditional bows, while firearms eventually revolutionized hunting entirely. However, many of the fundamental principles of hunting, understanding animal behavior, reading terrain, working cooperatively in groups, remained constant throughout these technological changes. The legacy of ancient hunting practices can still be seen in modern hunting cultures around the world. Many traditional techniques continue to be used by indigenous peoples and others who maintain close connections to traditional ways of life. The knowledge and skills developed by ancient hunters continue to provide insights into animal behavior, ecology, and sustainable resource management. Modern archaeology continues to reveal new information about ancient hunting practices, as sophisticated analytical techniques allow researchers to extract more information from archaeological sites and artifacts. Chemical analysis of ancient bones can reveal details about animal diets and hunting patterns, while computer modeling helps researchers understand how ancient hunting techniques might have worked in practice. The study of ancient hunting practices also provides valuable insights into human evolution and the development of cooperation, communication, and technological innovation. The challenges faced by ancient hunters required solutions that pushed the boundaries of human ingenuity and laid the groundwork for many later technological and social developments. As we've seen throughout this journey, hunting in ancient times was far more than just a means of obtaining food. It was a complex activity that required sophisticated knowledge, advanced technology for its time, elaborate social cooperation, and deep spiritual understanding. The techniques developed by our ancestors weren't crude or simple, but represented the pinnacle of human achievement in their respective eras. The patience required for successful hunting taught our ancestors the value of careful observation and planning. The cooperation necessary for group hunts helped develop the social skills and organizational abilities that would later be applied to agriculture, construction, and governance. The innovation required to create effective hunting tools pushed the boundaries of human creativity and laid the foundation for all subsequent technological development. The spiritual dimensions of hunting helped our ancestors develop complex belief systems that recognized their interconnectedness with the natural world. These belief systems often incorporated sophisticated understanding of ecology and sustainability that we're only beginning to appreciate in our modern era. The respect for animals and nature that characterized many hunting cultures provides valuable lessons for our current environmental challenges. The knowledge systems developed by hunting cultures represented some of humanity's earliest science, combining careful observation, hypothesis testing, and the accumulation of knowledge over generations. The ability to read tracks, predict animal behavior, and understand seasonal patterns required the same fundamental cognitive skills that underlie modern scientific thinking. The stories and traditions associated with hunting helped preserve and transmit crucial knowledge, while also building cultural identity and social cohesion. These oral traditions were often remarkably accurate repositories of practical information, encoded in memorable narratives that could be passed down through generations without the benefit of written language.
As we conclude this exploration of ancient hunting practices, it's worth reflecting on how these ancient activities continue to influence our modern world.
The cooperative skills developed through group hunting laid the groundwork for all subsequent human cooperation. The technological innovation driven by hunting needs contributed to the development of tools and weapons that would later be adapted for agriculture, construction, and other purposes. The deep knowledge of animal behavior and ecological relationships developed by hunters provided insights that remain valuable for modern conservation efforts. Many of the sustainable hunting practices developed by ancient cultures offer models for managing natural resources in our current era of environmental challenge. The respect for nature and understanding of human dependence on natural systems that characterized many hunting cultures provide important perspectives for addressing current environmental issues. These ancient worldviews recognized truths about ecological interconnectedness that modern science is rediscovering and validating. Perhaps most importantly, the story of ancient hunting reminds us of the remarkable adaptability and ingenuity of human beings. Faced with the fundamental challenge of survival in diverse and often hostile environments, our ancestors developed solutions that were both practical and elegant, both effective and sustainable. From the first stone tools crafted on African savannas to the sophisticated whale hunting techniques of Arctic peoples, from the coordinated mammoth hunts of Ice Age Europe to the patient stalking techniques of forest hunters, our ancestors demonstrated again and again that human intelligence, cooperation, and determination could overcome seemingly impossible challenges. These ancient hunters weren't just surviving, they were thriving, creating rich cultures, developing sophisticated technologies, and laying the foundations for all subsequent human achievement. Their legacy lives on, not just in the archaeological record, but in the fundamental human capabilities for cooperation, innovation, and adaptation that continue to serve us well in our modern challenges. As we face our own environmental and social challenges, we can draw inspiration from these ancient hunters who successfully navigated their complex relationships with the natural world while building the foundations of human civilization. Their patience, skill, cooperation, and respect for nature offer timeless lessons that remain relevant in our modern world. And their story reminds us of the remarkable journey that has brought humanity from those first stone tools to our current technological achievements. Good night.